Greetings, beloveds. I am so excited that we have incredible expert, mind body expert, coach, teacher, goddess, and my soul sis, Rebecca Tolin, back again. Rebecca is with us, sharing her story and sharing wisdom with us. We're going to have that first episode in the show notes, which we highly suggest listening to first. Rebecca, I am so happy to have you here with us again. Thank you.
It's so amazing to see you, my soul sis.
Thank you for
Oh.
being here. Thank you. And I thought, even though we definitely recommend everybody goes back and listen, but why don't you give us a recap? Because your story is so profound and so powerful, your healing journey. Maybe you could give us a recap on that, and then we can we'll start there.
Absolutely. And these were back in the years that you and I were living in the same city in San Diego, California. And I was going through a really difficult time in my life. I had been through a traumatic event that was really a capital T trauma. And then a number of other losses and changes and traumas followed. And I caught these three viruses and fell very ill. I should say I was an active TV news reporter. I was this healthy young woman in my early 30s at that time. But after catching those viruses after the traumatic event, I literally crashed. My system just went haywire and I became mostly homebound. I had fatigue and insomnia and pain and exhaustion, and it was diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. And I went to many, many doctors. Ended up having to leave a career that I really enjoyed a lot as a broadcast journalist, and sort of pursued all sorts of different physical remedies, all the things that allopathic medicine can offer, all the things that naturopathic medicine can offer, and everything in between, every kind of energy treatment, crystal, anything that I could do to get better, I did. But it was really coming from this vantage of, how do I fix myself, or how does somebody else fix me so I can get back to my old life? And none of that worked. None of the diets, none of the supplements, none of the medications. I actually got worse in some ways. Although over the years, I started practicing yoga and meditation daily. And I found that that was really the only thing that started relieving some of my symptoms. And after I would meditate or practice yoga or spend time in nature, these are really my sort of healing sanctuaries. I would always feel a little bit better, at least emotionally and mentally. And I was listening to Eckhart Tolle and reading Rumi, and I actually had a lot of brain fog, so I couldn't read a lot, but just in those few words, I would just be with them. And I wasn't working at that time. I couldn't do a whole lot in the world. So there was actually a lot of quiet. And through that process, I really fell into the state of surrender. Something happened to me where I just stopped fighting my body. I stopped fighting the symptoms, all the losses that had happened. And I really was in the present moment much of the time. And I still had really intense symptoms. It felt like I had the flu 24/7 many days. But I wasn't fighting it emotionally and mentally. They were sort of these sensations that I became curious about. And from that place, I signed up for an online poetry class, a writing class, and I met a woman who recovered from the same diagnosis, ME/CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. And she explained to me the role of trauma and stress and unprocessed emotions, and how those affect our brain and nervous system and can create real physical symptoms that can be disabling for many years, and how she recovered. And when she told me this story at the end of a 3-hour conversation, I she literally said to me 4 words that changed my life, which is, "You are not sick." And I said, "I'm not sick." And I leapt out of the bed and I started running around the block. And I actually hadn't ran in 13 years. But there was this light bulb that went off, that I stepped into a reality where I was not a sick person. I didn't see myself that way. And for me, because I had been a science journalist, I needed to understand the science. If someone had told me I wasn't sick, years before I would have like slugged them, because I had all these symptoms, but it was more a result of the way my brain and nervous system were stuck in flight, fight, and freeze. And so I had somewhat of a spontaneous remission, but then still the symptoms came back and went on this odyssey after that into mind body healing to really heal on deeper levels, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Oh my gosh, you're my hero S.
And you're mine.
I remember the whole journey. I was right there at your side, and even just like you were so dedicated, whether it was, the Ayurvedic diet or, like you would literally be practicing yoga and meditation for hours. Like I was like, I bow to you. I remember you going to these various healers and then, but I just I love two things. Love so much of what you said, but you are not sick. It's just so profoundly powerful because to go from person to person and, feel it was like giving away your power. And really it was when, because I think it was you said, going to somebody else outside of you. And instead now it's like you're working from the inside out. And it's so amazing. And you are empowered with your own tools. And so I'd love to come back to where you said suppressed emotions affect the brain, the nervous system. So can we even just start from that point? Because we've all had traumatic experience in our life. We've all had, and in order, there's been that fight, that freeze where we had to kind of freeze that aspect of ourselves in order to just survive. So I feel that this is something so powerful for everybody to hear. So why don't we kind of unpack that to start with?
Yeah, I know. I think learning about our brain and our nervous system are so essential. And kids sort of act already in tune with their nervous systems. But you and I were chatting, they can be trained out of it. And so we need to sort of reconnect and understand what's happening with emotions because with a certain set of symptoms, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and chronic fatigue syndrome included, doctors really can't find any pathological cause for the symptoms. So, I mean, there certainly are conditions out there that need allopathic treatment. Their disease processes. Even then, I think it's so important to understand the emotional links, even if there are medical treatments for you. But for a lot of these kind of conditions, there really aren't, they're medically unexplained symptoms. And so there's a lot of neuroscience now that really shows the role of suppressed emotions in causing or at least perpetuating or somehow contributing to a range of autoimmune issues as well as chronic pain, chronic fatigue. And there was this physician in New York named Dr. John Sarno, the late great Dr. John Sarno, and he wrote 4 books on the role of these suppressed emotions and how when the brain perceives danger because there is not enough support or the habit or understanding of how to process the stressors in our life and sort of acknowledge our emotions, it triggers a physiological process in our body that creates real physical symptoms. And in a way, you could say those are sort of an alarm system, an alarm bell that there's a perception of danger. And oftentimes, for a lot of us, emotions weren't safe to feel, especially emotions like frustration or anger, these emotions that are considered negative, but really are just part of being human. And
Mhm.
so I know for me, I went through an assault and I wasn't able to speak to it or about it for many years. And when I did finally see a therapist, she said, "Well, you must have anger, you must have rage over this." I was like, "No, I can't feel a thing because it's so bottled up." And so slowly but surely I started really working with sensations in my body, what I would have called symptoms, the fatigue, the pain, and often they would morph into emotions. So that these emotions are sort of expressing as physical symptoms in many cases. And I felt like I was really working with the raw energy of what was causing the symptoms, the root cause. And then I would experience an emotion and emotions like anger or sadness. I mean, they come in these waves, and when we can be with them, in our body, they often release. And so I started having those kinds of experiences and really realizing the link between our emotions and our symptoms and really our well-being on all levels.
It's so amazing. And it's just kind of like you, rather than pushing down and numbing, and everybody's got their own unique ways of numbing, be it television, food, shopping, alcohol, whatever. So instead, you're going into that sensation, first of all. And I think on some level, the soul, the body, the goes, oh, it's safe. Oh, she wants to hear me. I don't have to be this, pretend I'm not alive here. Okay, okay, I can start to write up because it reminds me sometimes, like, Neve, my daughter, she might be having this, like, just total, just yeah, like she's letting go of her stress. And I put my hand on her, and go, okay, honey, just keep going, just get it out of your body. And she stops a second, then she just carries on, and it's just like it's natural. She's just like, yeah, I'll get it out. And even the other day, she was like, I feel like I've got something in my body I need, and like they're just so in tune. Whereas us at some stage, or that would just keep pushing down. No, no, I can't. So it's starting to say it's safe and it's okay. So then that freeze starts to come alive and go, okay. And then it releases. So it's an emotion. So that's another level of release, is what you're saying, just so I can really understand. And so then the life force is coming back into the body. So it doesn't need to put out things like stress. And instead it's allowed to feel and breathe, and like, it's like the soul goes, okay, this is actually safe. I can be seen and heard. Like your tissues are saying that.
Absolutely. And I love how you're raising your children. And got to witness you raising your children in their very early days when you were in San Diego. But that's invaluable to just put your hand and say, it's okay. It's okay to feel, because that's really what we need, is that permission and that safety. And sometimes we need what is we would call in kind of nervous system regulation, someone to co-regulate with, someone who's a safe presence. So
Yeah.
we feel safe enough to feel. But yeah, that is absolutely what I'm saying, is as we're present with these sensations in our body, we can come out of that sort of frozen state, which is really when you see animals in the wild, right? There's this feigned death where they sort of go into this frozen state. Well, that can happen to us as mammals too, where there's this freeze response. And so that can be associated with fatigue and brain fog and lethargy. And we need a sense of safety in and around us to feel the emotions. And so there's a meditation I started practicing and then I later trained in, called somatic tracking, where you're literally tracking or following these different sensations in the body. And what we might just be mentalizing, like, oh, these symptoms, I've got to get rid of them. And it's so understandable. We start encountering, there's this world, there's this universe of sensation inside of us that's tingling or pulsing or dull or cool or burning. And they shift. And as we bring our attention to them, it's actually signaling to our brain and nervous system, oh, we're paying attention. We're picking up on the signals you're trying to tell us that there's some danger, but sending back signals cognitively and somatically that I'm here, I'm safe, I'm present, everything's okay.
That's so beautiful. And so then there is a safety, and it doesn't need to have these mechanisms that kind of lock the system in some ways, right? So,
That's it.
so are you saying that this is a matter of this starting to allow this to be part of your daily experience, just allowing yourself to feel, and then when things arise, you feel them, and then you can process them, and then they just flow on through your system, other than being put down
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's why this is relevant for every single human being, whether or
Yeah.
not you've ever had or have chronic
Yes.
symptoms of any kind, is it's like we are also emotional beings. And I know for myself, my spiritual journey has been integral to who I am. I mean, I feel like it's who I am at my core, is we are these beings, right? Having this human experience. And I know for so many years I was in a spiritual bypass, right? I was sort of meditating and practicing yoga. And those were gateways for me, I think, to feel a readiness to move into the areas that were stuck, that were still traumatized inside my body. But I was really bypassing. all these emotions and really also talking about some of these really difficult experiences I had had, which I'm not saying necessarily talk therapy alone is the answer. It's also really integrating the body.
Yeah.
I
It's
enjoy
it's
somatic
part of it.
experiencing and yeah, but I think it's true for all of us just on a daily basis as much as we can sort of check in. Like now I have this process every day, ideally throughout the day. It's just what am I feeling emotionally? And especially if there is rumination, if your mind is spinning or you're noticing tension in your shoulders or some really uncomfortable symptom, it's like what's happening emotionally? Because there's almost always something that was disturbing that we're not aware of or we're not acknowledging, and just giving ourselves a little space to breathe into that.
Yeah, it's like, what am I not listening to? And so in some ways, if the more that we become attuned to that, the more that we understand the language of our body, of our soul, of our mind, our our brain. Um, and so I know you do these incredible meditations where you just get everyone to listen to the organ, the sensation, like as you said, the burning or whatever it may be. And then I love that you brought up the part of spiritual bypass. So do you feel right? Because a lot of people are like, I want to be of the light, want to be the light, but to have that full embodiment, we have to integrate our light and our shadow. So do you think in some ways the shadow aspect is, it's like those normal human natural like anger and frustration. Like, do you think in some ways you know, that's what people are talking about when they're saying the shadow aspect, but actually they're beautiful. And once they're honored, it's just like, it's just your body speaking to you. Like anger is usually just saying something doesn't feel right about how this person is treating me or the situation. So it's just a signal. And then we let ourselves feel it. And, so, but I think there's this, ooh, like anger is bad or this is bad, but actually we wouldn't be given this beautiful array of emotions. They've all got a place. So I'd love for you to speak more to that.
Oh, absolutely. I know. And anger was something that I really didn't feel as a child or really as an adult. It didn't feel safe. I didn't allow myself to go there. And in most of our cultures, we don't have an example of sort of healthy anger. So I'm talking about healthy anger or healthy aggression, which is, as you say, it is actually a signal typically that there's either a violation of a boundary. So someone's sort of doing something that doesn't feel right to us, or something isn't present that we need, like respect. So it's signaling something. So that can be different forms of anger or frustration or irritation. There's some need that's not being met or a violation of a boundary. So there's also these messages in these emotions. What is that about? What do I need here? And of course, sadness or grief is a process of letting go, of turning inward, of needing to sort of honor whatever it is that is grieving, perhaps dying, that's needing to let go of something. All these emotions really have a place, and fear is very common with chronic symptoms that people get stuck in a fear loop about their body. Like I don't feel well. So that's triggering the nervous system. But even fear, I like to sort of welcome it and what's happening here. And often fear just needs to be soothed. We kind of evaluate, is there really a danger? And if there isn't really a danger, um, to really soothe that scared
The,
part.
the
It's just
compassion, the
quivering.
compassion, right?
The compassion.
I always say it's just like when fear is there, I'm like, hey, fear, how are you? Oh, I hear you're just trying to keep me safe. But if we look around, everything's actually fine in this space.
Exactly. That's so similar to my process. And I love that looking around too, because sometimes orienting to our environment just reminds us there is no lion, there is no tiger, and we kind of get back into our senses.
Yeah, and then and this is something I'd love you to speak more to, but the logical mind where it's like, well, okay, like that, let's just say the window triggers something because something happened around a window, right? And then somebody's talking about a window and it brings it up, right? But instead it's like, no, that is just a window and there's nothing to be scared of. And it's just like talking ourselves through it as if we talk a friend through it or a child through it. And then it's just like holding ourselves and just it's okay. It's so right.
Yes. I love it just how you treat your children, right? Like that just nurturance is really what we need. And so often when we're scared of something, including our body, when people have sensations in the body that are uncomfortable, we fight that. We push it away. We want to fix it and change it. But actually, we have that scared part of us, and our nervous system is very much like a scared child. It really needs cues of safety, compassion, nurturance, reassurance, and like reevaluation. Like you say, you sort of look at the window or whatever it is that's triggering you. With a lot of people I work with, and I was triggered by activity, by walking, by socializing, by eating certain foods that we think are dangerous for us. And it's learning to reassociate. Actually, those things are safe. So our nervous system does not speak in words. So the words are super helpful, but I love also how were bringing your hands instinctively to your chest, because also this touch, right? This somatic body, the soft animal of the body, as Mary Oliver wrote, is so important to be soothed too.
So beautiful. And then once you do that, you do the listening, and it's learning your own language. And that language, I suppose, may change over time. So just adjusting as that happens and that awareness. And then once you do that, what happens with, and you've kind of, okay, I'm safe, the compassion, then what is the shift that happens in the system, in the brain? Because I know this is incredible how you work with people to help them and really transform this energy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so alive and dynamic and so different for anyone when we can really stick with that sensation in the body. Often memories of childhood comes up, the inner child starts speaking, ancestors can come in. And sometimes there's just discomfort, and then maybe there's a little bit of relief. So we kind of follow wherever that energy goes. But what I really see over time with these practices, and what happened with me, was shifting out of that freeze response, which in polyvagal theory is sort of a state of shutdown or total collapse. And then we start sort of shifting into more sympathetic activation, which is more energy in the system, mobilization, but it can also go into flight or fight. So then we want to know how to work with that energy and actually channel that energy in a more physical way, in a healthy way, maybe more body movement and that sort of thing, just giving ourselves and our bodies permission to move. um, I don't guide meditations that are just very sort of still and stoic. They can be, but it can also include, well, kind of let your body move or shake or make sounds or whatever it really needs to do, and trying to tap back into that animal body that
I know.
knows the way to release, whatever it's holding. It
I know
knows how to do
anything.
that sort of
If I watch
instinctually.
the dogs, anything that happens, they're just shaking it all. They're shaking it out, and it's just like, and then they're just they go on. It's like done and dusted. You know,
Yeah.
amazing. And
Dogs are the greatest teachers to see that. They shake it off and then they're like asleep a second later, right?
good, all good. Amazing. And as we said, like these are primal. We knew these, and then it's like I think the more people get into technology and screens, like the more rigid people become in their bodies. And then, I mean, I even think things like specific like computer games and where there's a lot of violence, and it's like going into all these brainwaves, and then it's like in the body, like how much I love like Joe Dispenza's work and everything, but I was listening to an interview the other day where people were putting on that virtual reality, right? And it's like off a cliff, and your body literally feels like it's what is that doing to your nervous system? And
Right.
I don't
The
know.
nervous system really thinks it's happening.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The nervous system reacts whether it's virtual reality or reality, or whether it's a physical threat or an emotional threat. And so tuning into the nervous system and how it's responding and learning to sort of work with it is so important. And the nervous system is all through our body, so it's affecting everything about the way we feel. And then also to sort of answer your question is, as people reconnect with their body, and I know you do so much work with the earth body and the human body, um, we're so much more in touch with our intuition. We know the next step to take. We feel that gut instinct. And so it can be the next step on your healing journey or anything else, because these symptoms can have messages, right? They can be saying, actually, this relationship's out of alignment, or maybe you want to challenge yourself more in your work or study something that just is enthralling you, or you need more joy in your life. You need some time just for you, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, right? They're giving us messages. And so it's sort of a matter of calming ourselves down enough to sort of decipher what that is,
I love
soothing
that.
and then also deciphering it.
I love that because it's what
Yeah.
what you're saying is basically when there was a fight or flight freeze response, that energy is there and it's stored in the body, right? And so
Yeah.
you're vibrating at a certain vibration. So let's say, your first example was a relationship that was toxic, right? So you think, you've got this energy in your body that has turned toxic because it's frozen. And so you're
Yeah.
in this relationship that tends to align with that. And okay, that feels normal.
Yeah.
Then you start to work and release that and lighten that. And then it's like, there's not an alignment here. Actually, this feels really off, or this work feels really off, or this home that I'm like, whatever that is. And then it's like, then you start, like, as you said, these messages that this is out of alignment. And then there's this freedom to actually start making the changes. But I would imagine that this is just like brushing your teeth or just like a shower every day. It's like it just becomes an integration of your lifestyle of who you are. I was doing
Yes.
I was doing maths with my son the other day and he was like, "Oh my gosh, how do I do this long multiplication?" I was like, "Okay, it's just kind of like we're learning to drive a car. There's all these pieces and it just feels a lot right now. But then when I get in the car and we're kind of chatting and we're, you will get to a stage you go how to, and so I think it's the same with practices. They become a way of like just our consciousness and who we are. And it's just so powerful and necessary and freeing that it's something that's important that you just start to do daily. And then if you don't do it, you really start to notice.
Absolutely. And I know you have so many practices and rituals you do and that you teach. And so I think it's just important that we find the practices, the meditations, the exercises, the rituals that really are a match for us, and that changes all the time. But I can say I still practice these somatic meditations to start my day and to end my day at the very least, because for me, I can kind of naturally jump out of my body and be very cerebral and in my head. And so there's always this sort of like returning back to the body sensations. And that just feels safe for me. Even if there's some uncomfortable sensations, it feels like home. And then I start feeling the more subtle emotions and then even awareness, just awareness of sort of awake awareness that you could say is the soul or consciousness. But that sort of happens once we're tuning into the often the more gross sensations, and then we can go into the more subtle. So it is like brushing your teeth, it's finding those practices that really guide you back home to yourself, make you feel safe and make you feel supported. And that's what's healing. And then ultimately that's what's enjoyable, right? And nourishing. And then we have more that we can do and express in the world.
'Cause that aspect is so important as joy. And so would you kind of take us through a day in the life of Goddess Rebecca Tolin? But just kind of because, like, you really embody these practices. So what does it look like? You wake up in the morning and it's just straight on your meditation mat or something like maybe kind of share with us. And as you said, there's different practices that you might use at different times. Like
Yeah.
maybe all our listeners could go, okay, yeah, I could integrate that into my life. And,
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, my practices do change a bit day to day. There's somewhat of an art, but there's always practices in the morning and practices in the evening. And so typically I'll wake up around 6 a.m. or something like that. And I'm not one to jump immediately out of bed. I can be a bit sluggish. So I do just a somatic meditation, usually laying in bed. Sometimes I'll sit up in bed and just really kind of tune into four aspects of my being. One is the physical sensations. How is this physical body feeling today? And it's not so much analyzing as just like really bringing the energy from the head and from the brain and sort of letting it like sink down into the sensations in the body. And then I move into emotional sensations, which we also feel in the body. So it's just, okay, what emotions are present? And just sort of acknowledging them, feeling them, maybe lingering if something needs a little bit more attention. And then tuning into the mind. So it's just observing what's the state of my mind right now. And I like the metaphor of water. Is it sort of like choppy at the surface of a lake, or is it still like maybe the ocean floor? And I just kind of watch the mind and what thoughts it's sort of churning up. And often just watching the mind actually really quiets it down. And then tuning into awareness itself, what some people might call the soul. For me, it's sort of just a sense of awake awareness. And I'll feel it in and around my body, and then often expand my awareness so I can kind of feel it in the room and then and beyond, and not having any borders at all. Then I like to kind of come back, bring it into the body. So I'm still in bed.
Love
So
it.
then when and I'll often kind of tune in and set an intention for the day. Something I'm grateful for, and then an intention for the day. And then I really like to move to sort of get out the eeky creaky bits. So that could be a little Tai Chi or Qigong, or that could be yoga and or a morning walk. I like going out for a brisk morning walk. Now, brisk for me is like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, not like for you, which I think is maybe 4 degrees
I like it so
Fahrenheit.
fresh and icy.
So fresh and icy, I know. For me, I love it. I'll just freeze, but I live in San Diego. But I like going out in nature and just really like looking at the trees, connecting to the bird song, and then I'll come back and generally I might do another short meditation and then just sort of eat something nourishing. And throughout the day, I try to tune into this question: what am I feeling emotionally? What am I feeling? Or if there's some upset, tuning in with self-compassion, which we can talk about a little more, and kind of what's the unmet need. And then at the end of the day, I really like closing again with sort of some somatic meditations.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes they're more based on emotions, sometimes it's just sort of awareness, but kind of bookending the day for me, just it's maintenance, but it's also pleasure. But they're healing practices, and I think they help me stay more in balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Like, and it's such an invitation for all of us. And I love the check-in throughout the day. And that just sounds so nourishing, body, mind, so like all aspects. And it feels like it's kind of layers. And then I would love for you to come back to, because like if there's things that go on throughout the day and you bring in that compassion. So I'd love for you to speak more to that. That would be amazing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we all tend to be so hard on ourselves. And the people I work with who have chronic symptoms, there's this sort of personality where people are, I mean, I'm blessed because I work with such kind, loving people who are so conscientious and so diligent, and try so hard, but often just like holding the emotions. And that can be like a pressure cooker. So, um, there can be with people I work with, and I'm sure anyone listening can relate to, self pressure or self criticism, perfectionism, people pleasing, just really maybe putting other people's needs consistently before your own. And so, what I've found is this just life giving balm for all of those different traits, which are really coping mechanisms we learned in childhood typically, is self compassion. And I love mindful self compassion as taught by Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, and I've done some trainings with them. But it's really learning to treat ourselves and speak to ourselves as we speak to a dear friend or someone we love. Because if we actually spoke to a friend the way we typically speak to ourselves, we might not have any friends. So it's really turning that inward. And I love mindful self compassion because it has these 3 steps. And the first one is really acknowledging how you feel. Well, I'm feeling frustrated now, or this is really difficult right now, and just sort of acknowledging that experience. And then the second step is our common humanity, just also acknowledging it's human to feel this way. It's normal to feel this way. I'm not even choosing this. This is just happening, and there's nothing wrong with me or my feelings or my body. And then the third part is self-kindness, which is really speaking to ourselves in a way that feels authentic, but oh, my dear, I'm here with you. I hear you. I see you. I care for you. I believe in you. This is going to pass. Whatever it is you would say to a friend, and whatever you need to hear, like that scared, alone part of you needs to hear. And then just sort of finally asking, what do I need right now? What's my unmet need? And really honoring that, the best you can, honoring that. And so weaving that self-compassion, and I have seen it has been a game changer for students and clients that I work with, because we can be doing all these practices to regulate our nervous system and meditate or eat well and just eat the perfect diet. But if we're constantly pressuring ourselves, that's keeping us locked in that flight fight. And that is putting a lot of pressure on our brain and nervous system. And it actually can perpetuate symptoms, but also just, a lot of unease. So it's just such a beautiful way to start to learn to care for ourselves. And I'm sure, Amanda, as you care for your children, right? If anyone has children in their life, to really think, what does the child need to feel soothed, and yeah, turn that to ourselves.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. And I would love, just lastly, to talk to this incredible training that you have created. I mean, this whole program where, and I know you launched it last year, where you really transformed so many people's lives, for people that were at this stage that you were at a number of years ago, when you had tried everything and you're just like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to get through this? And now you have, through your own healing experience, and what really truly worked for you. So tell us a little bit about your program, because I know it's starting now, and it's like I feel like it's an incredible program for just people that want to understand their nervous system, their body, their sensations better, and people with chronic fatigue and others. So please speak to us about this incredible program that you have created from your heart and soul.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is just absolutely what I call my soul signature. I feel like it is so my life's work, from everything I went through on my healing journey and what I learned, and now working with clients and students for a number of years. And what I really saw was the one-on-one work is so important. And I really recommend people work with a trauma therapist or a somatic therapist if they feel they need that. But the knowledge and the practices are so key. And it's sort of this course is like a download of knowledge and practices that really can bring people into a completely new paradigm in the way they view their body and view their life. And I created it as a program for healing because I work with a lot of people who have chronic fatigue syndrome. Long COVID is really now something I'm working a lot with, but even just insomnia, chronic pain, fatigue. But what students routinely have said is, this is a toolkit for life. Like, I wish I learned this as a child. I want this the rest of my life, because it's really a course on, how to connect and how to live true to my whole self.
Can you teach all the schools, please? Because that's what we need. That's what we need. The
Well,
schools, the universities, like,
it's something we all need, from the ground up. It's so true. And so many people like yourself are doing incredible work too, that are to reconnect us to ourself and the natural world. And so this program is really for people who have these sort of unexplained symptoms, whether it's headaches or digestive issues, and really learning to reconnect with their body, learn the knowledge that is going to sort of calm the nervous system, learn about the nervous system and how to help it regulate itself, find the message in the symptoms, and really ultimately step out more fully into your life. And that's what it is. And that's how we retrain our brain, is we do these things. But we do them in a little different framework through this sort of lens of safety, and start living in a way that is true to our heart, because that's profoundly healing, right? When we're living this authentic life and doing what we love.
oh, it's so beautiful. And I know this course is absolutely incredible, filled with meditations and practices and tools, as you said, for life, for this healing journey, but also for life. So you take them with you. So Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. I like would love to talk to you for hours now because we're going to do part three and a part four and a part.
Okay.
And I just want to say thank you for being here with us. And if there was one little nugget of wisdom you'd like to leave us with, what would that be?
It would be to really trust yourself and your body. So you have this still silent voice, and often you can hear it through your body, whether that's your gut instinct, your heart, your spiritual intuition, and your third eye. But just really trust yourself and continually walk towards what gives you a little more energy, a little more hope, and a little more joy.
So beautiful. And when I think of you, I think of hope, beauty, joy, grace, wisdom. I love you
Oh.
so much. Thank you for sharing and being here with us today.
I love you so much. Thank you for being you and for everything you do.
Love you. Thank you.